Star diddly bum, wars bum, star diddly bum. So you'll have noticed that The Force Awakens is now available to purchase on iTunes. That came as a surprise to me. I was expecting to have to wait until maybe around Christmas, or at least the summer, before that came out at all. But, well, I suppose it's sort of almost summer. No, it's not. It's April. So yeah, I thought I was going to be able to get through the book before the film came out, and then we could all buy it and just sort of, you know, have a look at the bits that I flagged up in the book. But that's not going to happen. It's out, and the only area in which it isn't out, which is the physical purchase as opposed to digital purchase market, it's also going to be out in that probably by the time you see this video. I think it's coming out in the next few days. So, never mind. Let's press on. New rule, I guess I'm not allowed to buy the film until I've read the whole book. Okay, let's go. Here we are on chapter 3, which opens with Poe Dameron in the cell. Now, it implies here that Poe has been in captivity for days. It isn't explicitly said, but it does say here in the second paragraph that people come in and beat him at different times of the day on different parts of his body, which doesn't strike me as a turn of phrase you'd use for something that just happens across one day. You'd say hours apart as opposed to at different times of day. Maybe that's just me, but saying different times of day to me implies that you're comparing different days to one another. And all this time he's barely even noticing because he's so depressed that he's failed his mission. Everything else is just a sort of a blank haze to him. Just taking off the cover again because I don't want to crease it up. It'll happen at some point, but not today. Let's also have a cup of tea while we're here. Join me in a cup of tea. If you got a cup of tea, get yourself a cup of tea. We're going to be reading some book. It'll be nice. Sit here with a cup of tea and a book. I've shaved. Not long before this. Is my face all blotchy? I think it probably is. Nice and smooth, though. Star Wars! So in the absence of Oscar Isaac, who turned Poe Dameron into such a likeable character, what we have here is something that tells us that he's good at his job. He cares more about the fact that he failed his mission than he does about his own personal safety or whether or not he's getting tortured. Then Kylo Ren shows up. Oh dear, Kylo Ren! And remember, at this point, we don't know who Kylo Ren is, so we don't know how scary he is, and we assume he's really scary. But the funny thing is, the first thing he says here is, I had no idea we had the best pilot in the Resistance on board. He had no idea, which is odd, because he's supposed to be sensitive in the Force, isn't he? Especially since earlier on, and I have now seen the film again, so I have checked that this is highlighted in the film as well, we saw him give Finn a very strange look, as though he was Force-sensing something about him, but we'll get back to that in, I think, the next chapter. I had no idea we had the best pilot in the Resistance on board, so it's like he's heard of this guy already. He's already heard of Poe Dameron, but he just didn't know that was him, which implies that he didn't recognise him down on Jakku either. And now he suspects that Tekka might have given him the map. What do we hear about the map here? I don't think we do. No, it doesn't look like we yet find out that there is a map. I'm trying to remember, you know, because my memory of the film and the book are blurring together, I'm trying to remember at what point in the story we hear about the existence of this map. I've read ahead to the next chapter and it's explicitly mentioned in that chapter, you see, which is why I'm trying to figure it out. Anyway, in the book, I think that Kylo Ren speaks a little bit too eloquently, given his character in the film, but I suspect that Alan Dean Foster is trying to make him seem formidable and Vader-esque at this early stage where we don't know much about him at this point. And Foster leaves some ambiguity and mystery here about what it actually is that Kylo Ren is doing as he extends his hand out towards Poe Dameron's face. But I'll tell you what he was doing. He was paving the way for that shot to be used in one of the more wonderful moments in the trailer. The moment where Poe's face is going, eh, and then it cuts to the Millennium Falcon and the music is just absolutely amazing in that whole sequence. Why wasn't the trailer music on the soundtrack album? I'm sure you can download it somewhere. Can you download it anywhere? I will. When I saw this moment on the screen and Kylo Ren's going blah, 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 with his hand and Poe's going ah with his face, I think, it's been a while now, but I think I was pretty sure straight away that what he was doing was searching through the guy's mind and that it hurt to have, it was almost like memories are being dragged out, and we certainly see that later on. But in the book, Alan makes it seem more like it could just simply be a kind of pain-based torture. You've got Kylo Ren murmuring, "Tell me," which in the film I interpreted as a kind of your thoughts betray you sort of thing, but here it seems like it could just be saying, "Tell me, you know, I'm hurting you, so tell me. The torture is happening, tell me." Now that's the way I think it's weighted, but it's open to interpretation, and I guess what I'm saying is that if I hadn't already seen the film when I read this chapter, I would think I wouldn't realise that it was a psychic thing going on at all. What I can't remember now is whether there's anything in the actual scene in the film and the way it's directed that kind of clues you into the fact that he's like trying to pull memories out psychically, or whether the memory of the fact that we find out later in the film that that's what his power is and that's what he does is kind of blending together with my memory of this scene, and I'm just sort of not remembering it properly. Immediately following this scene, we get on page 40 Kylo Ren coming out and talking to General Hux about this, and it is not, again, made clear that he was doing anything psychic in there. It's rather comparable to, you know, Darth Vader coming out and saying whatever it is he says after he's used that sort of torture ball on Princess Leia. So it's never actually confirmed or denied here that Kylo Ren has been inside Poe's mind, so I guess that they're saving that for later on. Next scene, we're back to Rey and BB-8. And there's a strange bit of dialogue here as Rey is talking about her family and getting a bit misty-eyed, and she says, "No, I wasn't crying, there's just a bit of grit in my eye." And then she goes, "This whole world is like a bit of grit." And then BB-8 goes like, "Beepy boop boopy boopy boop." And she goes, "No, BB-8, I don't have a world in my eye." What? Either that is a bit of weirdly written dialogue, or it's a bit of weirdly written dialogue that's weirdly written because it's a clue about something. I don't have a world in my eye. You know, we still don't know much about who Rey is, and we won't find out for another couple of years yet. So I find myself unable to see lines like that and wonder if they aren't perhaps little clues as to things that the filmmakers do know about her and we don't yet. Well, you never know, do you? Now she's back to Unkar Plutt here, trying to get him to give her some quarter portions in exchange for various stuff that she's found, but he's looking at the droid the whole time, and this is something people have wondered about. Does Unkar Plutt know about that droid all along? It's really ambiguous to what extent Unkar Plutt is actually like a character in this. In this film, he's an extremely backgroundy character, just serving to stand there and not give her things that she needs. But think about everything that's going on here. It looks like, in the flashback, he might be the one that the young Rey is kind of given to when her family leave or whatever happened. It looks like he's really, really interested in what's going on with this BB-8 droid, and for some reason, he owns the Millennium Falcon. The film was criticised for using coincidences in its plot quite a few times, but I can't help but think that perhaps they're not coincidences. Anyway, I'll be interested to find out. We don't get much about it here. All we're told is that his attention was actually on the rotund droid. He immediately asks her, "But what about the droid? Is he with you?" And then smiles, and the implication here is that he never smiles, that it comes as an unpleasant surprise to her to see what that even looks like. He actually starts drooling, and then there's an interesting moment here that I don't think is in the film, or at least it isn't like this in the film. Plutt starts to really push on her that he wants this droid and he'll pay for it, and she starts to play hardball a bit, and that's when he says, "Well, I'll pay you 60 portions, and we get a thing about how that's a lot. But BB-8 is kind of nudging her and trying to say like, "No, don't sell me to this guy." So what she does is she switches him off in a really dramatic way. She presses a few buttons on BB-8's head, and then it kind of just goes like, "Ooh, boof." The head falls all the way to the ground and hits the ground dramatically. I can see why they wouldn't make it look like that in the film, because BB-8 is just really, really cute, and it would make us hate Rey if we watched her sort of essentially knock him unconscious in order to barter over his carcass, at which point she barters the price up to 100 portions and is surprised to find that he goes for that. And in fact what he says is, "How can I resist the force of your personality?" Is that just Alan being droll, or is that a thing? On page 44 now, it doesn't actually make it very clear why she changes her mind about selling the droid. It does say that she's thinking hard, so it might be being kept intentionally secret by not telling us her thoughts. But if not, then it just seems to be the fact that Unkar Plutt is really, really happy about the idea of buying the droid that seems to stop her, just that on its own. He starts screaming and yelling at her, "You are nothing! You have nothing!" I can't remember his voice, but it was something like that. "Quarter portions," I remember that. And she shoots back that what she has is her freedom and her pride, and we get this sense that everyone in the marketplace is like, "Yeah, you go, yeah," because they're all essentially trapped in this lifestyle because of him, because of Unkar Plutt, because he gets to just decide, you know, what portions to give to people. You wonder if, like, because there's that many of them, and they're all Reys, they're all scavengers, and they're all good at it, and they're all surviving, like I said a couple of videos ago, they're all amazing people. They could turn against Unkar Plutt really quickly. It's a surprise that they haven't tried that. Then we get a little clue about what Rey is to Unkar Plutt. It's just a tiny little detail. He's calming down after the fact that he just sort of yelled at her and lost control, and it says that rarely happens to him. Even when he's usually shouting as part of, like, negotiations, it's a calculated thing. It's like part of the act, and it's never personal, and it says, "Not even now is it personal," when it involved the lovely but disrespectful Rey. That was something of a pity, he mused. Then he grabs a communicator and he says to someone, who he's obviously going to send off after the droid, "I have a job for you." Back to Poe Dameron now, and there's more word choices here that obscure exactly what it is Kylo Ren did to him. If we haven't seen the film, then for all we know, Kylo just tortured him until he gave up his secrets himself. And there's an implication about halfway down the page, at the moment his mind was not functioning functioning properly, which suggests that whatever it is Kylo does to your mind, it makes you sort of stupid and addled for a little while. Now we're on page 47, and poor old Alan has to tell us that this is Finn without us having any identifying features for who Finn is. He hasn't got a name, he hasn't got a blood smear on his helmet anymore, but he figures out a way. He uses the now absent blood smear like it's a big reveal. He took his helmet off, which now wasn't covered in blood anymore. You guys, it's him! Actually, we've already heard the designation FN21... what is it, 2187 in the scene with Captain Phasma, but I'm pretty sure that Alan here is going, it's alright guys, I don't expect you to be able to remember that name, because the whole point is that it's completely anonymous, unmemorable, and like the opposite of a person's name. He's not going to try and make us identify him just by that name alone, so he gives us the clue about the smeared blood, but he does on this occasion describe it as having been smeared across it, the helmet, by the flailing hand of a dying trooper. So it is, I was wrong before, it's not just sort of, he didn't just shake his hand and it splattered on, although that's kind of how it's written the first time. No, it is here now, confirmed, it was smeared on. I think it was reasonable to make that mistake at the time, because the quote earlier on is, a brief final flailing by the downed trooper splattered the newcomer's face mask with blood, then hand and arm fell and movement ceased. So I guess what I was supposed to infer there was that the flailing caused actual hand to mask contact, whereas I thought it just meant that like flecks of blood got sort of spattered off. So that's a shame, because it does mean that one of the clear differences between film and book were actually just me being mistaken, and this book is becoming increasingly close to just describing what happens in the film, which is a shame, because I was looking for something a little bit more in-depth, which is what you got in the old Star Wars book. But let's press on and see what we get. I'll take this minor deviation on page 48 in its place then. Here, Poe does not preempt Finn by guessing that he's breaking him out because he needs a pilot. The way I remember it in the film, Poe says, why are you breaking me out? And Finn goes, and Finn goes, you need a pilot. And he goes, yes, I need a pilot. Whereas here in the book, Poe says, buddy, if we're gonna do this, we have to be honest with each other. And that's when Finn confesses that what he needs is a pilot. Poe trusts Finn against his better judgment, because remember, at this point, Finn is still a stormtrooper, and in fact, I could be reaching now, but maybe the mysterious quality that makes Poe want to trust Finn could be a thing. If it turns out in episode 8 that Finn happens to be powerful in the bit of the Force that gets people to trust you, well, you know where you heard about that first, don't you? And then, right in the middle of that scene, bang, the chapter just stops. But there is a stupendous cliffhanger, oh wait, no it isn't, at the end of this chapter. A droid comes round the corner and sees them, and they're like, uh-oh, is the droid going to report us? And then the book goes, droids didn't do that, so no, it didn't, the end. So in the interest of authenticity, I want to try and finish this video in the middle of a scene. I've had an idea how to do that.